Bill Gallegos. I'm the Executive Director of Communities for a Better Environment. We're a statewide environmental justice organization that works in Northern California and Southern California, primarily in low-income African American Latino communities that are fence line to major polluters like oil refineries and power plants. The pollution trading programs that are being proposed by the California Air Resources Board and others have no democratic component. They have no component that institutionalizes or builds in public participation. They set up basically a market trading program in which even the regulatory agencies have very little control or oversight. And we can see now from what's happened with Enron, with Qualcomm, and now with the housing crisis, the mortgage crisis, that an unregulated industry without public oversight, without democratic participation, without a democratic voice of the people in the communities, only leads to disaster.
Another, perhaps more blatant example of fraud was someone named Ann Schultz, who I believe is currently in federal prison. She was convicted in the U.S. District Court of Los Angeles for criminal wire fraud for selling $17 million of fraudulent emissions credits. She literally forged documents that purported to be emission credits from ExxonMobil. These credits said that ExxonMobil had reduced its pollution by a certain amount. She then marketed those credits to other companies who purchased them for $17 million. Well, it turned out that she simply printed those credits on her home laser printer with a very good scanner. And she happened to be one of the architects of the Los Angeles pollution trading program called Reclaim. She was one of the individuals who, on behalf of industry, helped write the rules and obviously knew the rules very well and well enough to get around them. Now, obviously, this is an egregious example, but what we see on Wall Street today is this kind of fraud is not unusual if there's inadequate regulation. In fact, there are people who go to business school to learn how to exploit the holes in any market. And that's what traders will do in order to make a profit if there's not adequate regulation.
It's not just environmental justice communities that are opposing cap and trade. Fundamentally, communities recognize that we have a lot at stake in whether or not we actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions because of this intersection between the emissions of fossil fuel and climate. But there's actually a very broad-based reduction of the use of a trading market to achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions. The fact of the matter is that the Congressional Budget Office recently released a report that indicated that a better alternative to a cap and trade program would be a carbon tax. Al Gore, in his acceptance of the Nobel Peace Prize because of his work on climate change, called for the use of a carbon tax. James Hansen, a scientist from NASA, has called for a carbon tax. Ads from major newspapers have called for use of a carbon tax over a cap and trade programs. There are those who don't understand why the environmental justice community is so concerned about using a carbon trading program. They say that carbon is global. But the fact of the matter is there are no facilities that emit only carbon. Every facility that emits carbon is also emitting a co-pollutant, and most notably, as a product of combustion of fossil fuel, all of those facilities are emitting particulate matter. Particulate matter, when it's very, very small, has a very serious negative impact on people's health. And in fact, for communities that are hosting the fossil fuel infrastructure, it's that particulate matter that has serious and significant negative health impacts. This is an opportunity, as we think about how we're going to address carbon, for us to also think about how we're going to address particulate matter. And by putting those two things together, we can, again, have a program that both reduces greenhouse gas emissions and therefore slows climate change and increases community health. And if we can have a program that does both of those things, both of those critical things at the same time, then isn't that better than a program that is in effect setting up an international carbon trading scheme in hopes that this time it'll actually work to reduce emissions?
Okay, my name is Roberto Cabrales. I'm a community organizer with Communities for a Better Environment here in Southern California. I work in Southeast LA, mainly in Huntington Park and surrounding areas. We've been working on a campaign for 2 years to defeat a proposed project, which is the Vernon Power Plant, which they changed the name to Southeast Regional Energy Project. It's a 943 megawatt power plant, natural gas fired, which is a fossil fuel. We're concerned that it's a very large project in the city of Vernon, where there already exists numerous sources of pollution, and we're talking about chemical manufacturing, chemical storage, power plants. There's already a couple power plants. There's food manufacturing, and some of them not so, pleasant as far as smells are concerned. We have chrome platers, other nickel platers, and it's just a number of sources of pollution that we already have existing there. We have horrible smells coming from Vernon, and then we're surrounded by freeways. So, I mean, the cumulative impact issue is one of the biggest concerns, seeing that there's some of the heavy trafficked and congested roads that distribute a lot of the goods that come from the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. So the Alameda Corridor is another major source. So, to place a power plant in a region that already suffers greatly is a big concern for the community and for CBE.
My name is Daryl Molina, and I'm the Youth Program Coordinator at Communities for a Better Environment. And so it's really important for us, when we're doing our political education, to understand what's happening locally is part of a bigger thing that's happening all over the world, and we're part of it. And this is how you're being impacted as an individual here in this community, but there are also individuals in other areas that are also targets of this fossil fuel industry, in Africa or in South America or in different parts of the world that have these huge polluting facilities in their areas. And so I think a big part of the work that we do is movement building, and that's connecting our issues here locally to the larger movement that's happening. And so I think that's one way that folks can connect to climate change, because this is an issue that's going to affect all of us. And so especially with this Vernon Power Plant being such a huge contribution to global climate change if it's built, I think people understand that too. We're not just dealing with what are the impacts of this power plant here in the Southeast, but also how that can impact other people too.